Hey guys, how's it going? Okay, this is a little clip from March 23rd, and there was some interesting points about the neighborhood watch that I thought we should discuss.
Last September, Zimmerman invited Sanford Police Department volunteer coordinators to come to talk to his community about forming a neighborhood watch. And Zimmerman made sure he was elected coordinator of the group.
Now, how does he make sure that he was elected? Did he do something illegal, or did he bring people in to vote for him? I mean, just to make that statement is a statement against George and something that would be considered a lie, and at least in my eyes, because there is no evidence that he ever tried to become elected or become the neighborhood watch captain.
The coordinator says she clearly told Zimmerman what he could and couldn't do. She showed him this slide that says, quote, "Neighborhood watch is not the vigilante police."
So apparently this coordinator showed George this sign that said, "You're not the vigilante police. You're to work with the police. You're supposed to be their eyes and ears and report suspicious activity." Now, if you followed my videos in the past, you probably know that I disagree with that. But at the same time, I suggest that George did all those things. Number one, he was not acting as a vigilante. Number two, he was working with the police. He was on the phone and trying to communicate and coordinate with the police. He was being their eyes and ears. In fact, that's why he got out of his car to follow, so that he could keep an eye on George and keep hearing him. And, of course, he was reporting suspicious activity. So I don't even know why he would bring that sign up unless he thinks that maybe the word vigilante police would strike a chord with the race baiters, such as himself.
Work with the police, acting as their eyes and ears, and they are supposed to report on suspicious activity, not act on it.
And a lot of Trayvon supporters are insisting that George was out of line just for reporting the suspicious activity. That's one of the points that they've been making all along, that he shouldn't have even called the cops.
Joining me now is Chris Tutko, National Director of the Neighborhood Watch Program at the National Sheriff's Association.
The National Sheriff's Association is a private group. They throw in the name National and Sheriff's Association to make it sound like they have some sort of a official capacity, which they don't. They're no more powerful than the Boy Scouts. Their points, their opinions, and their rules are no more powerful or no more legally binding than following the Boy Scouts rules. The Boy Scouts have a rule that says no homosexuals allowed. But can we go and arrest people because they joined the Boy Scouts or brought their children to join the Boy Scouts when they were actually homosexuals? Of course not. They're private groups, private rules.
National Director of the Neighborhood Watch Program at the National Sheriff's Association. They developed the concept for neighborhood watch groups 40 years ago. Mr. Tutko, first, thanks for being here tonight.
Glad to be here.
Now, you have 25,000 neighborhood watch groups registered, but George Zimmerman and the watch group at Twin Lakes were not registered. It certainly didn't sound like Zimmerman was following the standards.
So, since that group was not registered with their group, their Boy Scout group, then they certainly aren't even bound in any way to their rules or regulations, obviously. So why does he bring this guy up to as if he has some sort of moral authority?
Has established, does it?
No, it certainly doesn't. One of the first things in the manual that we have created and on our website, first thing we say is no weapons whatsoever. That includes mace, metal flashlights, and especially guns.
Well, you know, that's fine and dandy for you to make such a rule, but it is certainly unconstitutional to make such a suggestion that Americans aren't allowed to carry their weapons as they walk around their neighborhood. Unconstitutional, and I would say a bad precedence, a bad rule, a bad idea all around. These groups were formed as a way to slowly take away our rights. They've been doing it for 40 years now. Now is the time for us to stand up to these groups, these supposed sheriff's groups that go constantly call us for donations and then tell us how we are to live our life. If I join a neighborhood watch, I don't give up my rights. I don't give up my civil rights to carry a gun or to walk around the neighborhood or do anything else I want to do. Their group has no power over me or anyone else. They are just an informational organization. All they do is provide information that they gather, that they feel is legitimate and proper.
No weapons, no guns?
Nothing.
None?
Nothing. No.
Okay.
Our job as a neighborhood watch is to be the eyes and ears of the law enforcement. We make our phone calls and we move on and let them do their job.
So where is the law? Where is the regulations that were broken? Even a minor law. Where is what kind of power does this guy think that his group has? I mean, sure, you can make suggestions. It's wonderful. You make all the suggestions you want. You know, they probably also have suggestions that you shouldn't drink in your car and drive, and that would be a proper one because there is actually a law against drinking and driving. But there is no law against carrying your gun when you're walking around the neighborhood monitoring it, is there? And since there is no law, they have no power to even make the suggestion. They can say it, but they have no power over anybody.
And I'm looking at your guidelines. Patrol members do not possess police power and shall not carry weapons, as you just said.
And, of course, they're making statements that aren't factual. For example, members do have police powers. For example, if you go to constitution.org, you can find out exactly what is involved in a citizen's arrest and how the Constitution permits it. It lays out the legal history all the way back to England. It even suggests that the fact that you have a gun gives you the power, or it says, without firepower, people are less likely going to be able to make a citizen's arrest. And most people in this country have heard the word citizen's arrest, although they don't understand exactly what the term means and that it comes from common law. You might not find a specific law in your Florida state law that says citizens can make an arrest, although it's already been proven in the courts. So in order to make a citizen's arrest, what does somebody have to do? Well, it says a private person may arrest another person who he has probable cause to believe is committing a crime in his presence, a felony, or an offense enumerated in Section 23581A2, or an aid of an enforcement officer. So like if you're walking down the street and you see a cop fighting with somebody, you're allowed to jump on that guy and help in the arrest. So these people are telling lies to the groups, the people that are joining their group, that they don't have police powers. It's just not true. And as I just said and shown, members should not try to apprehend a person, but under citizen's arrest, they have every right to do so. And then it says each member is liable as an individual for civil and criminal charges should he exceed his authority. But as a citizen, your authority is pretty broad. It's true, if you falsely arrest somebody, you can be held responsible for that. But if the evidence is clear and it's pretty obvious that you had every proper intention and it appeared as if the person was committing a felony, then you won't have to worry about it. As long as you see somebody committing a felony, you have every right to arrest them.
Members should not try to apprehend a person, and each member is liable as an individual for civil and criminal charges should he exceed his authority. Am I correctly reading your guidelines?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, this is a common sense operation.
It's too bad this guy doesn't have the common sense to read the Constitution. Apparently, most people in this country have been dumbed down in the sense of their rights, and it's unfortunate. So whenever somebody tells you you have the right to do this or you don't have the right to do that, it falls upon you as a sovereign citizen to find out exactly which rights you have and which ones you don't have, and to stand on those rights you have and do not allow others to take them away from you.
And common sense tells you you're not trained to do those things, so you shouldn't be involved in them.
So if common sense tells you you're not trained in them, you shouldn't be doing them. What happens if you look out your window and your neighbor is being raped and murdered in the front yard, and you have a gun, and you have every knowledge and ability to use that gun and to save that woman, but because you haven't been trained, you shouldn't do it? Is that what he's telling us? Or that their rules say be the eyes and the ears, wait for the cops, even if it takes them 15 minutes to get here, even if that woman is dead and this guy's killed 15 other people in the process, and you're standing there with your gun, but you've been told by the police that you're not allowed to do that. You might go to jail if you try to save somebody's life. Does that make any sense to you? Is that common sense to you? Because if it is, you're not an American.
When Zimmerman is projected by some as the head of a neighborhood watch group, not only was he not registered, it really gives the wrong image of what real legitimate registered watch groups like the 25,000 under you really does and really does not.
He doesn't seem to understand that registering a group means nothing. It's like, a 9-year-old boy is helping a little old lady across the street, but he doesn't have a Boy Scout uniform on. Is there some problem with that? Is he not allowed to help this little old lady because he's not joined their group? This is the same thing. I mean, we're talking about a group that has no authority. They don't even know the rules and the laws. They don't even understand the Constitution. Why should anybody be listening to them? The only reason they exist is because a bunch of people thought, well, let's use their information. Let's contact them, and maybe that'll protect us in some way. It doesn't protect you. Look at what happens. It obviously doesn't protect you. These people don't have a clue.
Exactly right. We try very hard to keep the communications between a neighborhood watch group and law enforcement. They're partners, and we want them to be partners. We want them to be able to work together and come up with a solution for each neighborhood, locally as well as regionally.
What he doesn't understand is the neighborhoods make up their own decisions. The neighborhood watch group is organized by its own neighborhood. These guys come and offer information, but they don't have any power. In fact, we started a neighborhood watch group over here with 3 guys, and guess what? Guess who approved it? The 3 of us. And guess who monitors our watch group? Us. Guess who has power over us? You guessed it again. Us. Nobody else. Nobody. And they can get my hands off of my gun after I'm good and dead, but not before.
When you look at, let me show you some calls that Zimmerman made, dozens of 911 calls on non-emergencies. March of 2005, he called 911, pothole blocking the road. November 2006, vehicle driving real slow, blasting music. 2010, November, trash in the roadway.
So he's talking about, 7 years ago that George called about a big pothole in the road that people were having a hard time getting around. Ooh, that was really bad of him. How stupid. And then 6 years ago, he calls and says there's a vehicle driving real slow and blasting music. Probably a drug dealer or, troublemakers of some sort. Is there some sort of problem with that? Is he not allowed to? I mean, what happens if you call the cops and say that? The cops can ignore it, right? They can go, well, look, there's no violence, there's nothing going on, we're just going to ignore that. If they want, right? Then November 2010, 2 years ago, he calls the cops and says there's trash in the roadway. Oh, God forbid that he call the cops to let them know that there's stuff blocking the road.
2011, open garage door. I mean, is this the kind of stuff that you...
So he calls in 2011 to report that somebody had left their garage door open. You know, a lot of people forget their garage door. It's awful nice that the neighbors monitor that and say, hey, somebody forgot their garage door. And is there something wrong with that? You know, this is the kind of attitude I'm talking about that people like Al Sharpton would point out. I mean, how ridiculous. This guy really doesn't have a life. So then again, in January before the shooting, he calls the cops to say, hey, there's some children playing out in the street. You know, probably a dangerous place to be for children. What wouldn't you say?
No. These are not quality of life issues. These are issues that are annoying. And again, to call a law enforcement agency on something along those lines, if you call them 10, 12, 15 times and it's a non-priority call, what's going to happen on the 16th call?
That's why they have a non-emergency number. You see, it's amazing how things work out. First they set up a 911 number so people can call that for emergencies, and then they make another number for non-emergency calls. Wow, what a concept! They actually thought this out and said, you know what? Sometimes people are going to call that aren't emergencies. Things like, you know, the garage door left open, a pothole in the road that's blocking the road, things like that would be non-emergency, that we wouldn't want to bother the cops with, but we would want to let them know, right?
So this kind of personality is not only violating certain things in your guidelines, but they're certainly doing things that you don't think even falls within what the purpose of Neighborhood Watch is set up for.
So now he's talking about this kind of personality. MSNBC has been trying to tear down George from day one, and they use words like this kind of personality. See, to me, if I were trying to sue MSNBC for defamation of character, this is the kind of statements that I would be pointing to in the courtroom. I would bring the jury to this and say, look, he's trying to suggest that by me calling the police to point out a pothole in the road or a garage door open, that I have some sort of problem with my personality and that it's causing issues with the police. This is how they stirred up the hate of George. This is how they brought all these people out in huge crowds to scream for justice and that they want to kill George, that there are thousands and thousands of comments on the internet stating that if they can find George, they will kill him. These people need to be held responsible for this.
Correct. This is, when I first heard of this, it's horrific to begin with, but it certainly has no place in a neighborhood watch for anybody to be carrying a weapon. Even if you have a concealed weapons permit, you don't have a right to be on neighborhood watch.
And that, of course, is the main point of this video. He's a liar, this man that you see on the screen here. He's misinformed, and he's trying to tell people as if he is some sort of authority figure. He's telling us that George didn't have a right to carry his gun. Well, isn't it interesting that George was not charged with carrying a gun illegally? Isn't that interesting? And wouldn't that be a point that would be brought up on this show? Maybe they would say, well, how come he wasn't arrested for carrying a gun if it's not legal? Because it is legal. And that his little group, his little Boy Scout group, has no power over me or George. George is totally free of these people. This guy is nothing. He's a peon. And the only reason anyone listens to him is because MSNBC brings him to the forefront and says, oh, let him speak because he agrees with us. Why don't they bring the NRA out? I mean, the NRA has just as much power, actually probably more power than this group. They train people in gun use every day. Thousands and thousands of people every day are trained by the NRA, and they can explain to you the proper use of guns and when it is proper to defend yourself or protect your neighborhood. But MSNBC isn't interested with people that actually have knowledge. They just want people that will agree with them. And that's why when I see people like this on TV, it makes me sick, because I know the only reason he's on here is because he shares their ideology. They're anti-gun racist. They hate guns and they love racism. They love any kind of racism where it's blacks hating whites. That's fine. But if a white guy says anything negative about a black person, this guy is the devil himself. And they don't seem to realize that my right to carry a gun is protected just as their right to even open their mouth on this show is protected. So if they want to eliminate my right to carry a gun, then maybe their right to even speak would be no longer protected. I mean, who's going to protect their rights if I'm not there, if the rest of us who have the constitutional right to defend ourselves and others no longer have that power? Let's face it, the only point of this whole show was to pump their racist agenda and try to suggest people don't have rights. So they're trying to take away rights. They're trying to suggest that racism exists in a terrible way and that people should not have guns, that guns are a terrible thing. They spend the whole show without any information, true information, no laws or anything like that. They don't want to talk about the Constitution. They just want to talk about their opinions, which is fine. Go ahead and have your opinion, but it's just a lot of hot air. Anyhow, good talking to you guys. Talk to you later. Bye.